time to bring in Tony Ferrari from the Hockey News as we preview the World Junior Championship.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. I'm your host, Brian Fisher. With me today, as always, is always venerable Scotty Bentley, other host here at Locked On Red Wings, also host at Locked On Tigers. And today we bring on a very special guest. If you hear him on hockey podcasts, I wouldn't be surprised because this man is everywhere. He is a writer for the Hockey News. Tony Ferrari, been on this show before. My first time ever actually speaking with him, not just listening to him and then cutting out all the times where Nolan would mess up and Scotty would mess up. Tony never messed up, though. Never cut anything from him. How's it going, not. Tony?
You're far too kind, because 90% of those episodes was me and Nolan going on about something completely idiotic, or it was always a good time.
Tony's going to be with us today to preview World Junior Championship. Starts in, literally 3 days, assuming it actually starts.
Yep.
The NHL's on pause. They pulled out of the Olympics. COVID's raging through everything. Who knows? But as of right now, it is scheduled to start in just 3 days here. And the Red Wings have 8 prospects going to the World Junior Championship, second most to only Carolina, who somehow has 10, which is insane.
Yeah.
And before we get into that, I do got to thank you guys for making us your first listen every single day. We are free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube. So this might be your first time ever to check out Tony Ferrari's face. I mean, if that's something that you're into.
Beautiful face.
You're probably already tired of seeing Scotty and Mi's face, but here we are. Without further ado, Tony, there are 8 prospects, as I already established. And I don't know if you want to start with the ones that are the most draw, like Simone Edmondson, if you want to just start with, Team USA and the prospects that they have. You know what? Red Savage. Top 10 name all time. Let's start with Red Savage, just because we got to put that name into the universe, because I got to see that guy in a Red Wings uniform eventually.
Yeah, that's the boy, Raymond and Seider. It's one of the, like you said, one of the best names, and just a fun player. He's going to play a pretty good role in this team on Team USA, because I think he's one of those guys that's kind of in the middle of the lineup where you're like, someone's got to score here. And Raymond Savage is one of those guys that can kind of score a little bit. He can throw the body around, plays with a ton of energy. I think he's going to be an important player for this team, because, like I said, they're not going to be scoring the lights out. So they're going to need guys playing good two-way games and playing responsible in that energy role. So Red Savage is going to be one of those guys. And the other Red Wings prospect on Team USA is Carter Mizer. And he's kind of the same role, a little bit lower in the lineup. He's got a pretty good shot. I've seen him play on the power play a little bit in camp. So I think both these guys have a shot at being pretty decent contributors to this team, because, like I said, they really don't have a guy up front this year.
What do you expect from them in the juniors? Those two guys specifically. I mean, what kind of are they playing those roles in juniors as well?
Yeah, they'll probably play those roles in juniors. I'll see them in the middle six, I'm guessing, and it's going to be interesting to see exactly which one of them take a big step up, because, like I said, you got Chaz Lucius, Matthew Coronado, Matty Beniers, and guys like that, but you don't really have a Jack Hughes or a Trevor Zegras this year. So there's plenty of opportunity for guys to fill in scoring. And we've seen Mizer on the power play a little bit in camp. We've seen Raymond Savage kind of play a little bit on the penalty kill and everything. So they're going to play big roles. How big offensively is going to be the question.
Yeah, and they're going to have fierce competition north of the border here, as that Team Canada lineup just is absolutely stacked with talent. It's not even fair.
Unreal.
Bedard, Shane Wright, Owen Power, and then, of course, Sebastian Cossa, who is Detroit Red Wings' lone representative on Team Canada. I mean, that is going to be the team to beat in the World Junior Championships. And Sebastian Cossa is having himself a real strong year with the Edmonton Oil Kings. I think a .926 save percentage, a little bit down from last year, but playing in a more increased role. Dude, Team Canada, Sebastian Cossa in that, I can't imagine it. That would be the team to beat.
I don't know. Team Canada isn't as strong as they could be, and they're not as strong as they have been the last few years. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I think Cossa is going to be the starter. He's just a beast in the net, 6'6", well over 200 pounds. He's going to be the starter there, and he's got all the tools. He's got everything going for him. But this team really isn't that fantastic if we're like comparing to other Canadian teams in the past. Connor Bedard is an unreal talent, but he's been the extra forward, him and Logan Stankoven in camp, and those are both two guys I think would be better than about having anyone in the bottom six pretty much. So they're making some questionable lineup decisions. They didn't bring Brant Clark, which was another questionable decision, not even inviting him to camp. And their entire defense is left-handed. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I can't believe you forgot Donovan Cebrango, our little fella.
Oh, how could I do that?
Yes. Oh, and he's going to play a pretty good role. Like I've seen him in camp a few times, and we've seen him in the evaluation camp paired up in the top and up in the lineup. So I think he's going to play a pretty decent role, and he's the guy on that back end that can kind of do a little bit of everything. He's not necessarily this pure offensive guy. He's not a pure defensive guy. He can kind of play both sides of the puck, do a little bit of everything. I think I liken him to their Carson Lambos light. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of role he can carve out for himself. But man, like this team is going to be fun. But yeah, like I said, like Connor Bedard is the extra forward. Logan Stankoven's an extra forward. Shane Wright's their number one center. But like this team doesn't really have a huge star outside of those couple guys, and this team normally has a few really high-end scorers. I think they're going to rely a lot on Perfetti. They're going to rely a lot on Shane Wright up at the top of the lineup, and then it's going to be Dylan Genther, Maverick Bourque, guys like that going. Who are we going to get the secondary scoring from? Because as the United States did, Team Canada kind of took a few players that are a little bit more rough and tumble, and Ridley Gregg and Jake Neighbors and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, this probably is the team to beat, especially in the Group A that they're in, because Group A really isn't all that strong this year, with Finland being really the only good team in the group as well. Czechia they're fine. They're not great. Austria is pretty awful, I'll be completely honest with you. And Germany's not as strong as they have been in the past because they're missing two important pieces in Seider and Stutzel.
No Mo Seider, baby.
No Mo Seider. Where's he at these days?
He's just collecting Norris votes in the NHL.
Norris votes. I brought it up yesterday, Scotty. Tony's backing me up.
Norris votes, baby.
Votes. I don't know if he's not going to be a finalist. Like that's going to be a little bit crazy.
Right,
but I fully expect votes.
No, you'll come around. You'll come around.
We're getting there. Scotty, what you got, man?
So Cossa specifically, like obviously he, as we talked about, is big Red Wings rep on that good Canadian team. And I guess the season he's having as a whole, like when you compare it to last year he was unbelievable. And not that he's been horrible or anything this year, but not the level, I guess you would say, of last season. So what have you seen from him this year, and what are you expecting out of him in the juniors?
Well, I'd start with saying I don't think he's playing any worse than he did last year. I think a big reason for last year was the division they were in because of the weird formatted schedule and everything with COVID and everything. It was a pretty terrible division, and they just played within their division. Edmonton was really the only good team in that division, so they beat up on a couple stinker teams. So, and that's nothing against any of the other teams, but it just wasn't the same quality of competition. And now they're playing other teams like Winnipeg and these other teams out in the Dub that are actually pretty good. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of where his numbers lie at the end of the year, because I think a .924 save percentage, 226 goals against, like he's still having a pretty ridiculous year. He's still one of the top goaltending prospects in the world, and really, the only thing that I can say that, and this is not really a negative, but the one thing I kind of hoping to see at the World Juniors is a matchup with him and Wallstedt in the quarterfinals, semifinals, or the finals. Like I'd love to see him go up against Sweden and Jesper Wallstedt, and just see those two guys battle it out for who should have gone first of the two elite goalies last year in the draft. So it's going to be fun to see, and I think Cossa is going to have a pretty good tournament for Canada.
So this is off topic, but I'm glad you brought up the Wallstedt and Sebastian Cossa topic, because when the Detroit Red Wings moved up in the draft and took Cossa, and I just want to pick your brain on it because I want to know your thoughts. We were all shocked that they took Cossa because we thought for sure that was the move they were going to make for Jesper Wallstedt. What were when you saw the Detroit Red Wings took Cossa over Wallstedt, what was your reaction?
My reaction wasn't positive, and that's something that's I haven't.
You saw Nolan eyes, right?
Yeah, like I did, and I remember, like I haven't said this very much about a Steve Yzerman draft pick at all since he's been at the helm, but man, like I don't agree with it, and I still think Jesper Wallstedt's the better goalie. Like you look what he's doing in the pro leagues in Sweden this year, and he's absolutely fantastic. And it's nothing against Cossa. I think Cossa is still a phenomenal prospect. I think he's still going to be a legit high end NHL starter, but passing up on a goalie that could be and this is obviously high expectations and high praise, but it could be a Henrik Lundqvist type goalie, an Igor Shesterkin coming in, like that kind of guy. That's tough to swallow because I think Jesper Wallstedt's going to be that really high end guy competing for Vezinas and maybe even winning one or two. Like, and that's not to say Sebastian Cossa can't. I just think that it's not as likely because Sebastian Cossa, for everything that he is still not quite that elite goaltender. I think you have Askarov, Knight, and Wallstedt at the top, and then Sebastian Cossa kind of fills that tier right below those guys. But he's certainly better than any other goalie prospect in the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I understood Yzerman's mentality with it, with the whole you can't teach size thing, because that's true. Like, he's a giant, and if he can learn the athleticism, he learns the position better, he could be up there. But just as you mentioned, Wallstedt was a more well-rounded player, and I was actually shocked because they moved up because they heard that the rumor is they moved up because they heard somebody else was going to take a goaltender, and then Minnesota, just a couple picks later, took Wallstedt. So that would lead you to believe that Minnesota would have taken Cossa over Wallstedt as well. And it's just a surprise because it went against everything we had heard leading up to the draft.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially because like it's not like Jesper Wallstedt's a small guy. He's 6'3" himself, so he's still a pretty big goalie, and he actually is a little bit bigger, heavier than Sebastian Cossa, even without the 3 inches that Cossa has on him. So it's going to be interesting because, like you said, if Cossa can kind of get the positioning under him, kind of fix a few of the technical flaws that he has that Wallstedt doesn't, I think he could be just as good or like competing for Vezinas as well. But I think Kossa's got a little bit longer way to go to get there.
Well, we were talking about Jesper at 7, man. Like we had you on. Like
I had Wallstedt at 3 on my rankings.
We had a whole go back. You could find a show with me, you, and Nolan talk like campaigning almost at one point. By the end, it was mostly me for like, but like still, I mean, we had a whole.
Scotty's a problem.
We had a whole conversation about Jesper at 7 and how that like wasn't that far fetched, and you had him at the top of a lot of your boards and stuff. It's wild. And then it was a wild night, but Cossa has been damn good.
Yeah, I had him as a group of 3 at the top that was in the top tier. It wasn't like a guy that last year for me, it wasn't like, oh, this is the guy that should go with number 1. So, and I had Wallstedt right in that top tier for me at the 3rd overall ranking. So for me, I would have taken Wallstedt, but I mean, I don't think you're complaining about Cossa at 15 either.
And we're going to continue this conversation. Steer back to World Junior Championships. Well, that was very insightful. Appreciated that because I was always curious. I'm like, what do the people who actually like are in the business of draft analysis and scouting like know or think about that pick? So it's good to get a little bit of insight on that. But we'll steer back towards World Junior Championships when we come back. But first, I got to talk to you guys about StatHero. No one plays daily fantasy sports to lose. Winning feels so much better. But traditional fantasy sports are a long-term losing proposition because you never know who or what you're up against. StatHero is the first of its kind daily fantasy sports platform where it's you versus the house in head-to-head fantasy matchups, winner take all. And here's the crazy part. StatHero shows you their lineups before you play, and you handpick the team you want to face one-on-one. This never-before-seen innovation of fantasy sports and sports betting hybrid has StatHero players clocking odds that are over 4 times better. Why? Because you don't have to compete against thousands of experts or unknowns. StatHero puts you in control of your fate. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/hockey and use promo code hockey for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/hockey using promo code hockey for a 100% match. Again, stathero.com/hockey, promo code hockey, terms and conditions apply. All right, welcome back. Second segment here, Locked On Red Wings. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. We got Tony Ferrari with us, writer for the Hockey News. You can catch him on Twitter at the Tony Ferrari. Great follow because he's just, 100 like almost all the time hockey analysis. So if you love hockey, he's a good follow. Better than me and Scotty's problematic crap posting on Twitter. You're getting all kinds of heat.
My
today,
Twitter
man.
just goes through the ringer, man. It's all right. It got me this job. So who's the last laugh?
No, Scotty's a very good follow. But we're talking World Junior Championship that starts in just 3 days here. 2 days probably by the time you're listening to this. And the Red Wings prospects that are in it. And we're going to transition now to Team Finland, which I believe the only Detroit Red Wing prospect on Team Finland is Emil Vero. And Tony, Emil Vero, what are your thoughts? Take it away, buddy.
I think he's going to play a pretty big role in this team. Like they don't have a ton of high end defensemen on the squad, but Emil Vero is a guy that has some experience at the World Juniors before, so I think he's going to play a pretty solid role. I think the big guy on that blue line is Topi Niemela. Alexi Hemel-Samley will probably play a pretty solid role in Casper Pudio as well, but I see Emil Vero being a guy that can easily get into that top four, and if he's not in the top four, I think he plays on the third pairing, but like he's going to be a pretty key player for this team, and he plays a good, solid defensive game, and he can move pucks up the ice pretty efficiently from the back end. So, don't look for him to necessarily kind of lead the team in scoring or do anything crazy like that from the back end. But being a solid presence back there is going to be what he is, and it's going to be a pretty solid tournament for a Finnish team that kind of always seems to overperform where they're expected.
What I guess that is a natural transition into my question. Like that team as a whole, and where you kind of talked about where he specifically is gonna find his role within the team. But what are your thoughts on them as a whole?
I think they're a feisty team. Like they obviously lost to Ratu, the New York Islanders second round pick from last year, a guy that a lot of people thought was going to go in the top 10 to start the year, but they lost him because of COVID and everything. But I think there's guys on this team that can step up. I think Ronnie Hirvonen can move over to center. I think he's going to play a big role. A guy like Brad Lambert and Joaquin Kamel, 2 draft eligibles, both top 10 guys, pretty consensus in the draft this year, are going to be guys that are going to play bigger roles now. I think Brad Lambert specifically is going to be maybe relied on a little bit more in the transition game and being able to carry the puck a little bit more, which is where he really shines. So I think it's going to be fun to watch those guys go. And Aatu Ratu's goal scoring is going to fall on Joaquin Kamel, who, like I said, the other draft eligible. And this guy at one point was shooting 30% in the Liga. So he's not shooting that quite anymore after coming back from injury, but he was tearing it up. So I think both those guys are going to get pretty big opportunities on this team. And while I don't think many people are picking them for medals, I the little preview for a little later, but I have them getting one because every year this team surprises.
Yeah, and they got tough competition right across the border from them with that Swedish-Finnish hate that exists for some reason. Team Sweden. Now, this is the team that I feel like most Red Wings fans, and I think most Red Wings fans who live in Michigan are going to be rooting for Team USA. But if you're a Red Wings fan who's looking for your prospects, you got one real big prospects as well as another one on this team in Theodor Niederbach, but Simone Edmondson is on Team Sweden, and that was the Red Wings' first-round draft pick this past year. And he has just been – he's one of those guys like Moritz Seider. I'm not saying Moritz Seider caliber, but we've been getting tons of highlights through hockey Twitter, looking at this guy, and people are starting to get their hopes up, their hype up. Tony, what have you seen from Simone Edmondson so far this season? And what do we hope to come of Simone Edmondson in World Junior Championship?
Well, I know you didn't want to compare him to Moritz Seider because it seems unfair with how good Moritz Seider's been, but he's having that draft plus one that Seider had. He's having a really, really good year in the SHL. He's going to be the best player on this Swedish team on the back end. I think him and Helge Grans are going to be the top pair, and I don't know if there's a better top pair, both guys included, in this tournament. I think the United States might be able to kind of combat that with whoever they pair with Jake Sanderson with. But in all honesty, I think Simone Edmondson is going to be one of the best defensemen at this tournament. And it's going to be fun to watch because the way he's been able to play up against men, the way he's been able to kind of showcase not only his defensive game, but his offensive game as well. It's going to be fun to watch him at this tournament. He's going to be back playing against kids his age, and usually when you get these adults playing, or these guys that were playing against adults playing against kids, it's an advantage. And then up front you have guys like Willie Meckland, Alexander Holtz, and even a guy like Theodor Niederbach, the other Red Wings prospect, all with SHL time this year. So or AHL time in Alexander Holtz's case. But man, like this team is loaded with pro ready guys that have experience against that level of player. So it's going to be hard to beat them.
Where do you think Edvinsson ranks as far as like this is pretty arbitrary, but what do you think? How close do you think he is to being the best player on this team?
On the Swedish team?
Yeah,
I'd say he's second or third.
Sure,
and that's only because I think William Mecklen's the best player in this team, and Alexander Holtz is the guy that you can compete with for a second. But I would have no issue with saying he's the second best player, maybe the third if you really love Alexander Holtz, but. Yeah, I think this guy's going to be able to kind of be an absolute dominant force for this team. And I mean, this is obviously with the exception of what Jesper Wall said, who I think is probably the best player at this tournament, possibly.
And I'm glad you brought up William Eklund, because my thought was swirling the entire time we were talking about Sweden. Of course, I'm going back to the draft now again, but there's the controversy of whether or not Yzerman should have taken Eklund or Edvinsson. And now I want to pick your brain on that, going back to that. And what we've seen out of Eklund, he had a stint with San Jose before getting sent back overseas. Shipped out. No good. No, I'm just kidding. He's going to be a fantastic player. Garbage. Edvinsson, who's excelling at the SHL. Where do you fall on that? And I guess part of that also is because they're different positionally. Do you think that Edvinsson was a better pick positionally for the Detroit Red Wings?
It's an interesting debate. I'll say that, because I did have William Eklund ahead. He was one of the guys in my top tier with Jesper Wallstedt last year, and I probably would have gone with William Eklund, but with the way Lucas Raymond's kind of panned out and everything, looking at Edvinsson and going, oh man, what is the future going to look like if we compare him and Seider together? Like, what is the future going to look like if you have both those two towers on the back end that can kind of do a bit of everything and be dominant presences both defensively and offensively at times? You certainly can't look at the pick and go, they went with the wrong player. I think as of right now, you're looking at them and you're going, okay, Eklund's had a pretty decent start to his SHL campaign, 5 points in 9 games. The San Jose stint, he had 4 points in 9 games. Like, it's not like he's dominating, but it's a guy with a ton of potential.
And he's holding his own. I mean, he held his own decent enough at the NHL level before he was probably ready. So, I mean, he's going to be a fantastic player. It's another one of those situations where we're really not going to know until the end of their careers who was the better draft pick. But as it stands right now, like, I can completely understand either way that Yzerman would have gone. Like, I can't argue it. I might have gone the other direction, but I mean, there's a reason why he's the general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, and I'm a guy in a chair with a half-made bed behind me.
Right? Like that's the thing, right? Like, we all like to make those judgments and stuff, and we all like to poke fun and whatnot. But at the end of the day, like, everyone that does this job at the NHL level is wrong 30% of the time. Everyone that does it on the amateur level, like myself or you guys, we're probably wrong a lot more than that. So it's one of those, never. But it's one of those things where, in hindsight, after a year, it's hard to judge. Give it 5 years, and then we can probably make a pretty solid kind of evaluation of where we stand then.
We're going to wrap up our World Junior Championship talk on the other side of this. But first, got to talk to you guys about BetOnline.ag. BetOnline has you covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to their new website or mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use their promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, so do not wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts. Final segment, Thursday edition, Locked On Red Wings. We are joined by Tony Ferrari. You would know that by now if you listen to the first 2 segments. If you're skipping to the third segment, I don't know what you guys are doing. Go back, listen to the first 2, because it's a gold mine. We're talking World Junior Championships. We've talked about the most noteworthy prospects that are making it for the Detroit Red Wings. I totally did not forget that Donovan Cebrango was on Team Canada. Did not do that. If you heard that, I'm gaslighting you right now. I did not say that. I did not forget about that. Tony, we've talked about the most notable prospects. I guess the final question regarding World Junior Championships I have for you is who you think is going to be the medal winners. And well, that's it. Who do you think is going to be the medal winners? There was no follow-up to that.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't need a follow-up on that one. Well, it's a fun year because I don't think there's a clear-cut favorite, as much as a lot of the Canadian media is like, oh, it's Canada. As a Canadian here, I'm here to tell you, it's maybe not, because I don't have them as my gold medal pick. I think the bronze medal game is going to be between Russia and Finland. Finland's going to take that. That's my guess. I think Finland's always just incredibly feisty, and Russia hates the bronze medal, so they don't try in that game at all. So I think Finland takes the bronze, and then the gold medal game, I have Canada and Sweden going up against each other, with the Swedes taking the gold because Jesper Wallstedt goes up against Sebastian Cossa and says, I should have been the first goalie taken last year, and shuts out Canada, or has just a great performance. So I have the Swedes taking gold, Canada with silver, and Finland, the feisty Finns, with the bronze.
So USA just lays an egg in this tournament, essentially.
I just don't think they have the offensive firepower. I think their blue line's fantastic. Their blue line's great. Jake Sanderson, Scott Morrow, guys like that back there. Great blue line, but they just don't have the guys up front, the horses to get there. And I mean, even if the horse's name is Friday, it doesn't matter.
Oh, if you're listening
what
to this,
what a callback. What a
keep
callback.
a lookout for some bonus content because there's a conversation that happened between segments here that is going to get posted.
That's a pro move, Tony.
That's what I am. I am a pro sitting here in a backwards baseball cap.
It's a pro move.
Do you take then? I guess if I were to have a follow-up question, it would be: is Jesper Wallstedt in this scenario your MVP of the tournament?
Yeah, I think he's my MVP. He'd be my top goalie again, and I think he's going to be the guy that just puts on a show from start to finish for Sweden. I think the Swedes go as far as he goes, and they have some offensive punch as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how far they get. And I do think they're the best, most well-rounded team at this tournament. If I'm going with a top forward, I'm going to be bold here and say Matvei Michkov, the Russian kid, the young guy for next year's draft, the 2023 draft. He's just so fantastic. Every time I watch this kid play, if he doesn't score a Michigan goal, I'm going to be disappointed because I think he has 4 or 5 this year. So watch out for that. And then on the back end, I think Simone Edmondson competes with Topi Niemela, but I think Niemela, after winning it last year, goes back to back and wins the second one.
Thank you for calling it the Michigan too, and not like the Svechnikov, like people were trying to get started last year. I appreciate you calling it the Michigan.
Get out of here with that.
Scott, do you have any
how many Zegras Michigan assists are there in this tournament?
We'll go with 1 assist and 2 goals. I don't know who's going to score the second one, but Michkov gets one of the goals.
There you go.
All right, because that's like, I feel like that at least has justification of calling that like the Zegras move because it was a pass. You know, like that at least has a little more weight behind it than like just trying to rename the Michigan something else. So but people are trying it now. I forget what league it was in, but went viral the other day. Somebody else did it.
Yeah, the WHL Cross Hannes of Red Wings prospects. Weirdly enough, that we're on.
There you go.
He
it's all over
completed the Zegras pass and I'm not going to brag, but I batted one in practice before my beer league game the other day from a Zegras pass. It wasn't quite as pretty, but we did it with no.
Oh, it was. No, it was.
We're going to call it the Ferrari now.
We are.
That's actually that's catchy.
Get it started. Yeah,
that's kind of hard, honestly. Yeah,
the Ferrari. So you know that we're not going to let you get out of here without talking about the 2 rookies on this team. Well, there's 3 rookies on this team, but you know the 2 Calder favorites in Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond. And Scotty and I talk about it every single day. So I guess it's just your turn now to rave because we're not taking any negative feedback on these 2 players. We'll not accept it.
Seider is also like Tony's boy. Seider is like Seider, yeah.
I mean, if I have to say anything about these 2, it's they're not very good at hockey at all. I don't know if they can do no, honestly, it's been so much fun watching them this year. I was a guy that I was one of the very few people that had Lucas Raymond third in his draft year. I had him above Stützle. To me, it was a clear cut above Stützle. Like the way he affected the game in transition and as a playmaker, as a play driver from the wing, it was rare. And I didn't think there was any other winger in that draft that did that the way Lucas Raymond did. So not having him in my top 3 would have been a complete farcity, in my opinion. And I mean, we're seeing it now. He's outscoring Lafreniere. He's outscoring Stützle. Byfield hasn't had a chance to really get his feet going after breaking his ankle early in the year. But I mean, he's been the highest scoring player from that draft class this year, and he's not too far behind Lafreniere's career total. Does he push Tim Stützle's career total by the end of the year? That's probably a little bit much, but I won't be shocked if he passes him in points next year. And man, this kid's been fantastic. And as Scotty said, my boy Moritz Seider, my German son.
Your day one, baby. That's the dog. That's the dog.
He was the first guy I went a little hard for in my draft coverage back in his draft year. I was super, super pumped about this kid. I thought the world of him. I'm sure I've told it on this podcast before, but the quick story with Moritz Seider for me is I had him at number 7 on my board going into the final rankings of the year. And I'm not going to name the high profile draft person, but I give them shit regularly for talking me down out of it, saying, and they were like, listen, like this is the first year you're starting to get some notoriety. People are starting to follow you. They're starting to trust you. Don't be so crazy and bold like that. So I put him down at 11, which was still higher than most people had him anyways, but I had him in that top 10. I loved this kid's game. his offensive upside was hidden. And while it wasn't a guarantee, I did think it was there. I didn't think either of these two would be this good this quick, though. That's crazy how fast they've kind of come on and literally been possibly the Red Wings' best forward behind Dylan Larkin and certainly the best defenseman on the team, and with Moritz Seider kind of taking over and everyone going, yeah, he's the best guy back there. So it's been so much fun to watch these guys.
And you mentioned about his offensive upside being kind of hidden. And that's one thing I've brought up to Scotty multiple times, and we've talked about, is his offensive upside is almost kind of hidden inside of his defensive upside with his ability to maintain the puck on the opposing blue line, on the offensive blue line. He's able to wait out and create opportunities. He's done that twice in the last 3 or 4 games. He created an opportunity for Dylan Larkin to score from the point. He created a opportunity for Tyler Bertuzzi to score in the slot by just waiting and waiting and waiting for the puck to the lane to open up. And it's just that ability to the ability of his puck possession skills play into his ability to create offensive chances. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and it can't be understated enough how good he has been offensively as well as defensively.
Well, I think the big thing with him is growing up, he was an offensive guy. He wasn't this defensive person that he is now. You look back at his like U16 years, his U18 years, even when he was playing in the U19 as a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old, he was about a point per game guy. Like, he was a guy that was always producing offensively. And then one of the articles I read during his draft year was that his coaches in the DEL asked him, hey, they're like, man, you have the offensive game. That's no question. But with your size, with your skating ability, you could be a really high-end player if you figure out the defensive side of the puck. So his first year in the DEL, he literally just sat back, played defense, learned that side of the game. And every once in a while, you'd see the flashes. You'd see him make a pass that you're like, oh, not every defenseman can make that pass. But he's not doing it so much, and he's not being put in the offensive opportunities. He's not being put in the power play and everything like that. So he wasn't putting up the stats. So everyone was so quick to deem him a defense-only guy. Whereas those signs were there. If you were watching him enough, the signs were there that he had this offensive potential. And again, I didn't expect it to be this good, this quick. 21 points in 31 games as a rookie in the NHL is good for a forward, let alone a defenseman. And this kid's, in my opinion, right now, Moritz Seider is the leader for the Calder.
That was my follow-up question.
Norris.
He's gonna get votes, baby.
We'll get him turned around.
We'll get you around.
We'll
get you on board. We'll get you on board.
Hell, Moritz Seider for Vezina. Let's get it going.
Why not, right?
Why
Let's
not?
go.
Blocking enough shots.
Get a Hart Trophy in there.
Yeah, let's go.
What can't he do?
And the one last thing I want to say, because I got to wrap it up, is what you said there about how the coaches came to him like, hey, focus on your defensive game. You got the offensive game. It says a lot about his mindset, his ego, his humility, that he took that, and instead of getting like mad, like, oh, I'm the player that I am, like, why can't they just like respect that? Like something, because there are people out there who are egomaniacs, and like Andreas Athanasiou is the guy I always go to, who he had major flaws, but he never worked to improve them and only focused on being the speed breakaway goal scoring guy. He heard that feedback and improved on it. And I think that says a lot about the type of person he is off the ice as well as on the ice.
Yeah, it really does. And every interview I've seen him in, it's always professional, but still laid back and easygoing. Like, he still has that kind of freewheeling kid nature about him. And I love that about him, because as we all probably know, hockey isn't always the funnest sport to cover in terms of interviewing guys, because they're a little bit starchy, and the NHL's beating some of the fun out of them. But Moritz Seider is a guy that loves to have fun, loves to make jokes, loves to have fun with the media. And on top of that, he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL at this point. I think just looking at his defensive impacts, he's been one of the better defensive guys in the league. And offensively, he's sitting tied for 12th in scoring among all defensemen. So he's certainly going to get Norris votes, because you look at some of the guys above him and you're like, yeah, those guys have more points, but geez, are they black holes defensively? And Moritz Seider's not that. He's able to do all this offensive game while still being a stout defender.
Thank you. Scotty, any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. I love Mo Seider. the videos, like you said, he loves to have fun. There's probably like once a month the Red Wings will drop a video of him and Raymond just like messing with each other. It's adorable.
And you go back even, right? You go back even to the World Juniors a couple years ago, and he's jamming out to Eminem. There was a video during there's a video during his draft year where, if I'm not mistaken, it's his draft year. He's on stage at a karaoke night and he's like singing Old Town Road. Right?
Yes,
Like
it was
so good.
That was like, I want to say like 6 months after he was drafted.
Yeah,
Man. He's a fool. I love him.
I love this
him.
kid.
Hockey, Red Wings hockey is fun again, guys, and I love it.
We're
back. We are back. Want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. Now make Locked On Bets your second listen. They're your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. They're hosted by your boy Q with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling. It's free and available on all platforms. Make sure you follow Tony on Twitter at the Tony Ferrari. And Scotty and I will be back with you guys tomorrow for a very special Christmas edition of Locked On Red Wings. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.